Welcome to NCBA's Cattleman's Call podcast with host Lane Nordland.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another conversation here on the Cattleman's Call podcast. I'm Lane Nordland, and today we are having our conversation during the 2023 summer business meeting of the cattle industry in beautiful San Diego. And while all of us are looking out the window, the sun's shining, it's nice and warm outside. Well, we are inside taking care of business. It's been a very, very busy session here, creating policy and advocating on behalf of the nation's cattle producers. And today's conversation is going to talk a little more about the National Beef Quality Audit and what those results were. But first, we'd like to thank our friends at Beefmaster for sponsoring today's podcast here today. Well, let's get to our guests. We have Dr. Keith Belk joining us from Colorado State University, and Michaela Clowser, NCBA Director of Producer Education. And as I mentioned, we're going to talk about that National Beef Quality Audit, what it is and why it's conducted every 5 years to create that benchmark for the industry to see where we have improved and where we need to do a little bit of work to improve beef quality and safety for our producers and our animals alike. So first off, Dr. Belk, thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you.
Have you enjoyed your time here in the hotel? I mean, sometimes we get outside a little bit, but how are things going in San Diego here today?
It's been fantastic so far. We're enjoying it. You know, back in Colorado, it's 105, so this seems pretty mild. We're enjoying the sea weather for sure.
Dr. Belk, for yourself?
It's been great. I always enjoy coming to meetings where you get the opportunity to mingle with like-minded folks, so this is a great meeting to come to.
Well, again, thank you for joining us. And first off, we'll start with you, Dr. Belk. What is your role there at Colorado State University?
I am in the Monfort Endowed Chair, and I'm Director of the Center for Meat Safety and Quality, and I also serve as a faculty member on the Colorado School of Public Health.
So how long have you been involved with the beef quality audit?
Actually, since the very beginning, 1991. I was a graduate student at Texas A&M University when we conducted the very first of these in 1991, so I've been involved with all of them.
So I guess how did that come about then? Can you talk about back in the late 80s, early 90s when the conversation first started about having this audit?
Yeah, if you go back and look at what was happening to per capita consumption of beef and beef demand between about 1976 and 1990, it was a linear decline year after year after year, and the beef industry was hurting. And so there was a common theme among the industry organizations to try and figure out, firstly, what's causing this, and secondly, what do we do about it? We have to turn this around. And so a guy by the name of Dr. Chuck Lambert did an analysis on behalf at that time of the National Cattlemen's Association. He was an economist, and he had studied the teachings of W. Edwards Deming, the guy that sort of brought the American automotive industry back. And as a consequence of what Chuck had learned from Dr. Deming, he did this analysis called Lost Opportunities. And the idea is what kind of quality defects are we producing and what is it costing us in terms of what we can sell beef for at retail, and then in turn, what impact is that having on the demand for beef that consumers see at retail? And so he did that analysis, and he learned we were losing about $12 billion a year as an industry, and it was a significant amount of money at that time. The idea then was to do the audit to essentially begin to measure what we wanted to manage. If we were going to improve quality and hit consumer targets for quality, we needed to measure how good a job we were doing, and so we've done that every 5 years since.
And Michaela, maybe backtracking just for our audience's knowledge, let's just talk about your role in producer education.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am on the beef quality assurance team. So I work with producers, for producers, and researchers getting the latest science-based information to put out resources and educate producers, kind of anything they need, whatever is cutting edge in the industry and what can help them be more successful.
Yeah, well, we always need to be cutting edge, and Dr. Belk, when you mentioned that $12 billion, and that was in 1991, was that when that figure came out? Was that, or when?
He published that first paper in 1990 as
Okay.
sort of a white paper for the industry, and that sort of catalyzed the reaction to start the National Beef Quality Audit, and then the first of those was conducted in 1991. So,
And with inflation, that number today would be huge.
yeah.
I'm not even going to try to do the math there, but when we talk about the audit itself, again, it occurs every 5 years. Michaela, can you talk more about your role in completing that audit and how it's carried out?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work really closely with the universities that go out and collect the data for this audit. So this audit is conducted in 3 phases. Phase 1 is the interview phase. Phase 2 is the in-plant data collection, and then phase 3 I'll touch on here in a second. But that phase 1, those interviews are with buyers of beef. So those employees of companies like packers, food service, retailers, further processors, and government and trade organizations. And we ask them where we are winning, where there are additional opportunities for as an industry, and looking at the quality of our product. Phase 2 is pretty extensive. We go into plants across the country and take part of those harvest assessments. So we collect data on things like mobility scores, any condemnations, yield grade, hot carcass weight, anything you can think of. It's a massive set of data. I think this go round we went to 42 plants, conducted 130 interviews, and collected data from over 30,000 cattle. So it's pretty extensive, and so that's what the universities do, and I just work with them. They go out and do all that work, and where I come in is organizing the strategy session. So that is our phase 3. That is the last part of the audit. We come together, industry stakeholders representing the entire supply chain, researchers, cow-calf producers, geneticists. Everyone comes in and has a seat at the table, looks at this massive set of data, and decide what do we want to do with this? Where can we improve, and look at that benchmark of the industry. So we look at that, summarize it, and then I come in, and this serves as a direct feedback loop into the beef quality assurance program. So we really use these results to provide that latest scientific-based information for producers, and utilizing the BQA program for that.
Well, I want to talk about how we get more of that information dispersed, obviously through BQA and whatnot, but we do need to take a quick sponsor break. We'll be back after this message from our friends at Beefmaster.
Beefmasters are versatile, maternal, and sustainable. You can crossbreed your Beefmasters for more advantages. Crossbreeding provides 2 advantages to using straight-bred animals. First, there is heterosis or hybrid vigor, and the second advantage is breeding complementarity in a properly designed system. Breeding complementarity is taking advantage of the strengths of the different breeds used in the system. In a well-designed crossbreeding system, the producer can maximize the effect of both advantages. Check out Dr. Lance Bauer's article covering planned crossbreeding systems on our website at beefmasters.org.
Again, a big thank you to Beefmaster for bringing you today's Cattleman's Call conversation. We're joined by Dr. Keith Belk from Colorado State University and Michaela Clowser with NCBA. She's the Director of Producer Education, and we're talking about the National Beef Quality Audit completed there in 2022, and that's been a big talking point for producers here at the Summer Business Meeting in San Diego. And Michaela, you were talking about your work and working with the universities that are a part of the audit, and now we are talking just briefly about the Beef Quality Assurance Program. And so many producers out there are BQA certified, and so many more that are listening to this podcast are going to go get BQA certified as soon as they're done listening to this, I hope, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's the goal.
But, we take that information. How is it dispersed?
Yes, so we house everything at bqa.org. We have a couple 4-pagers on there summarizing the fed cattle sector and the market cow and bull sector. We did a fantastic Cattleman to Cattleman episode. That link is on YouTube. It's also on the website as well. Dr. Belk was certainly a highlight in that episode as well. It's always great to hear from those that have been around since the beginning of this project. We have a executive summary coming out that will go into the nitty-gritty, all the details of this research project. That will be there at bqa.org. And then additionally, some continuing educational resources for producers. Something that we're really focusing on this time is adding value to those market cows and bulls and what producers can do and how they can benefit from it. We saw that, through the interview phase of this audit, these companies stated that these market cow and bulls add a ton of secondary value, and they provide primals and subprimals to our beef supply, which was fantastic to hear and everything. So, but we have some strides to make as well in that sector. So, a ton of information just continuously coming out. I'll kind of make a world tour to producer meetings on this, and so yeah, we're trying to disperse it to anyone and everyone that will listen.
Well, and I just found it interesting learning about the process, because so much of the time in the industry, we always focus on from pasture to plate, and it's almost a reversal when pulling that data from plate to processing and whatnot. So I think that is really interesting when we're looking at where we need to make those improvements all the way down that supply chain. And Dr. Belk, how important is it to have these markers identified when we're looking at all segments of the industry and kind of going in reverse order from how most of us are trained to advocate for the industry from pasture to plate, but really looking at that reverse-wise?
Well, firstly, don't let Michaela fool you. She is doing an outstanding job for this industry, and it's been really a pleasure to get the chance to work with her on this. But to answer your question, I think that if you want to use Dr. Deming's philosophy of managing quality into the product we're trying to manufacture, you have to go to the end of the production chain. You have to ask people that are making purchasing decisions what's important to them and what are we doing right and what are we doing wrong. You may recall in the automotive industry in the 1970s, the U.S. automotive manufacturers, they weren't doing a very good job with that. They were producing cars that were too big. They drank too much gas. When you bought one, the knobs and stuff fell off. The doors were crooked. You had to take them back for 2 months to get them right. They were getting consumers were receiving a poor quality product for a lot of money that they were asking consumers to pay. Well, we were a little bit in that same situation in the beef industry. And so going back to the people that are making those decisions about making a buying product and saying, what could we do better or differently to better address your needs, I think that's what's important for cattle producers to hear.
And I guess when we look at the previous audit before the 2022 audit, what were some of those most prominent findings, positive and negatives alike, when we look to the one that preceded the 2022 audit?
If you go back to the 2016 audit, I think that you'll find that there hadn't been a lot of changes in what was important to buyers between 2011 and 2016. There was a tendency for food safety to be of paramount importance. We were still working through sort of a culture change in the industry relative to the importance of food safety to consumers and those that sell to consumers. And so that was something that we heard an awful lot about. One of the things that's been consistent really for about the last 3 audits is we've heard a lot about traceability. Traceability in the industry is super important for addressing animal health issues. It's also important to add value back to beef producers' pocketbooks by being able to export a greater number of products to a greater number of countries. And without the traceability, it really hampers our ability to sell products in other countries. And so that has shown up pretty much at every audit consistently. We asked producers to do a better job with eating quality traits like more marbling, better quality grades. And it's interesting, we just got done talking about this, but this time around we actually met the goals that were set in 2016 for improved quality grades in the 2022 audit. So we're really excited about that.
Now, I'm really interested. Obviously, we had a global pandemic that kind of threw off consumer buying habits and whatnot, too. So I'm interested to see if that came through in the 2022 data. But I guess compared to that 2016 audit, what does the 2022 audit tell us about where we improved? You said we met those goals, but what were some of those key improvements?
Yeah, we actually went to over 7% prime grade in this audit. We're over 85% prime and choice combined, and those are outstanding numbers for the industry. We've made additional improvements in reducing things like the number of arthritic joints. We have improved the perception of the market cow and bull industry. Perceptions of people that are downstream buying products have improved, and they've improved because they're starting to see that we care about the livestock. We're doing a better job in managing and handling them, and so those things are showing up. There's been a number of things that have sort of been ongoing, going back a number of audits. We've continued to reduce the number of injection site lesions that we see. We've seen an improvement in some of the ability of cattle to move. We measure mobility of them, and so we're seeing improvements in them. Not so much the market cows and bulls, but in the fed cattle. And so there's a number of traits that we've seen improvements, and they're direct results of the management of cattle producers to address these things.
Another success story is when we asked these companies, if there was an uptick in these animal welfare programs, they said yes, that there is more knowledge out there, that they are more familiar with the animal welfare programs, like the BQA program. When we surveyed the cattle haulers, both for market cow and bull and the fed sector, for the fed sector, over 90% of those truck drivers were BQAT transportation certified, and then close to 64% for the market cow and bull. Those cattle haulers, those could be cattle pots all the way to a bumper pull, those from those farmer ranchers, they were BQA certified. So, we saw that as a major win this go round. That wasn't asked previously, and that's something that we're really excited about.
We do need to take a quick sponsor break. We'll be back after this message from our friends at Beefmaster.
Beefmasters are versatile, maternal, and sustainable. You can crossbreed your Beefmasters for more advantages. Crossbreeding provides two advantages to using straight-bred animals. First, there is heterosis or hybrid vigor, and the second advantage is breeding complementarity in a properly designed system. Breeding complementarity is taking advantage of the strengths of the different breeds used in the system. In a well-designed crossbreeding system, the producer can maximize the effect of both advantages. Check out Dr. Lance Bauer's article covering planned crossbreeding systems on our website at beefmasters.org.
So in this new round, what are some areas that we could still see some improvement on?
Well, I think everybody's aware that sustainability has started to show up as something that's affecting the business. I don't know that everybody agrees on what sustainability is, but to most folks, I think addressing things like greenhouse gas emissions and making strides towards reducing our environmental footprint have shown up important. I don't think that those things are necessarily important to consumers yet. Data would indicate that they're not, but they are important to banking firms and to stockholders and to folks like that. And so that's something we're going to have to continue to work on. One of the low-hanging fruits in this audit that I think we got to begin to address almost immediately is we're seeing foreign object contamination show up in the audit again. And this is partially due to the fact that USDA FSIS is putting more regulatory emphasis on it. But the fact that we see so much shot from shotguns in beef is really amazing to me. Dr. Wayne Morgan, who is in charge of food safety for Golden State Foods, said at our strategy session that they find shot in beef 365 days a year. And so that's something we got to begin to fix. We got to figure out how to get foreign objects out of beef that's moving through the supply chain.
That's interesting. Back when I went on the Young Cattlemen's Conference in 2016, I guess the last time the audit took place, we stopped by one of the larger suppliers of frozen beef to McDonald's. And that's what they were talking about, because they lose a lot of money because they have to throw out the product so far after they find it, and then on the front side and the back side. And that's a lot of beef that they're having to throw away. And they were point blank just telling producers, we're finding shot in this beef. And, that could be from hunters. It could be from irresponsible cattle producers. We don't want to see that. But that's a lot of money.
It's an amazing effect. And now, even beyond what is having to be discarded, there's the regulatory issue. So the Food Safety Inspection Service that regulates the beef industry has determined that this is something we need to address, and so we need to address it. The other aspect of this is that there's an opportunity to prevent liability that can occur in beef downstream. And what I mean is not just criminal liability, but civil liability that is a consequence of finding foreign objects in beef. And so that's something that we're going to continue to have to pursue quickly.
And so I guess when we look at the latest audit, we talked about those foreign objects, but were there any other new issues that we saw in beef quality or safety?
Well, there's the grade has improved. I mentioned that the quality grading has improved dramatically, and we're really glad and excited to see that. But there's a consequence to that. We're seeing more yield grade 4s and 5s at this point, a substantially greater number of them. And so that's going to put some pressure on packers and processors. They're going to have to figure out ways of trimming that fat off so that it's not delivered to consumers. We sure don't want to go back to the 1980s again when we were delivering all that external fat to consumer products, because they don't want it. And so that's something we got to be cognizant about. There's some opportunities in bruising. We've actually are seeing increased numbers, not so much serious bruises, but pretty much just minor bruising on the surfaces of carcasses that are having an impact on the value of the really important, expensive cuts in the carcass, so down the top line of cattle. And we think that this is caused by cattle just becoming so large that we've outgrown the equipment and the facilities that we process cattle in. And so this is something we're going to have to address, because we can't continue to have to trim off this bruised lean. And that's going to continue to be a greater expense to the industry when you start talking about lost opportunities.
So, Michaela, as we maybe bring this back around to the conversation about beef quality assurance, or BQAT, the trucking aspect of it, and taking this information and helping every segment, understand this and the importance of quality care and safety for livestock and for humans alike. Let's just talk about how easy it is to go through these trainings, whether it's online or going to the in-person events and working with your state coordinators, just because it's about staying profitable, taking care of yourself, taking care of your animals, and truly just taking a few hours just to become a better producer.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Lane. Like you mentioned, so there's a couple ways to become BQA certified. We have our online modules, which are free. It takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours to go through that and get your certification. Or if you prefer an in-person training, you contact your state BQA coordinator, and they will get you lined up and connect you with a in-person training in your state. Those certifications are good for 3 years, so you do have to get recertified, but that's because of research like the National Beef Quality Audit that we use to continuously update those modules. And with BQA, we know that our producers have, most likely, they implement these best management practices already. So, they deserve credit for it. And so we really encourage every producer to become BQA certified, and you can do that at bqa.org.
And, a lot of producers, they're already doing this, but some may say, is this going to make me more money in the long end in marketing my cattle? I know that's a question a lot of people ask, but if we're doing it already, why not do it all, just get the training done?
Exactly, get credit for it. And, our consumers, what they care about most is a high quality product, a great eating experience. And right after that, it's animal welfare. BQA answers both of those questions. With BQA practices, you're able to produce a high quality, great tasting product and do it correctly and care for your cattle.
I would also turn that around, and I would say, think about it like this. If we don't do the things that are the right way of doing business, and we don't try to make the product as best that we can, then what will the consequences of that be? We'll go the same way that the U.S. automotive industry went. And so there is money in this, regardless of whether somebody's paid for it directly or not. It helps sustain the value of beef in the entire industry.
So, Dr. Belk and Michaela, what are just some tips for producers that have gone through BQA training, or maybe they're going to right after they listen to this show? What are some just basic tips? Let's just maybe focus on the cow-calf end of things, on what they can do to be just better producers in improving that quality of beef and life for those animals.
I think, like you mentioned, get BQA certified and, continuing education, get connected with local extension. We have a ton of events and industry events like our Stockmanship and Stewardship program. The Cattle Industry Convention is so educational. We have our online Cattlemen's webinar series, which is free for everyone. There's a lot of information out there, and learn and be devoted to continuous improvement. That's certainly my piece of advice, I think, to cow-calf producers.
Yeah, I don't think I could have said it any better. Continuous improvement is the W. Edwards Deming philosophy. And so there's never a day where we did things horribly and then the next day we fixed everything. It's always something that you continue to work on. And so if producers adopt that mentality and they continue, to be life learners and continue to implement new technologies and new production opportunities as they come along, then I think we're going to continue to get better and demand will continue to improve.
And one more time, Michaela, where does this information live? And if there's a producer out there that's interested in helping put on a BQA training, how can they do that as well?
Yes, so you can find all this information at www.bqa.org, or you can, there's a form stack on the website. You can reach out that way to get connected with me and the rest of the BQA team. So, any questions or any input or anything you may have, we would love to hear those comments and, find all your information at bqa.org.
Again, a lot of important information in these audits, a great program through BQA, but before I let you get back to your day here in San Diego, just any last thoughts, comments, or just anything you'd like to share with our audience here today?
I guess I would like to say, representing a large number of co-investigators and colleagues that have worked on this project for a long time, over many years, we very much appreciate the Beef Checkoff's contribution to this effort. I think it demonstrates, in my mind, extremely clearly the benefit of what an investment by the Beef Checkoff can do relative to working on beef demand type of issues. And then in addition to that, it's helped train, just like it helped train me, a number of people that are leaders and researchers and producers in this industry on really what's important in terms of quality in the beef industry. And so our thanks to the Beef Checkoff for continuing to fund this effort.
I think Dr. Belk hit the nail on the head. That's what I was going to say. Thanks so much to the Beef Checkoff. And, I owe a lot, and I've learned a lot from folks like Dr. Belk that have led this research program, and we really appreciate so much from them and the Beef Checkoff.
Well, again, thank you so much to Dr. Keith Belk and Michaela Clowser for joining us here today and briefly just sharing a glimpse of that 2022 Beef Quality Audit. And for all of our listeners out there, if you have not become Beef Quality Assurance Certified or BQA Trucking Certified, go do it. It doesn't take much time to do it, and you become a better producer and handler just by completing those exercises. Again, for more information, visit BQA online, and that will do it for today's conversation. Thank you both for joining us here today.
Thanks for having us.
All righty, friends, that will do it for today's Cattlemen's Call podcast. Again, a big thank you to our friends at Beefmaster for joining us and sponsoring today's content. I'm Lane Nordlund. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to NCBA's Cattlemen's Call podcast with Lane Nordlund. For more information, visit ncba.org and make sure to subscribe to the podcast today.